Welcome, everyone, to the Ghost Helper podcast. This is where we discuss all things psychic and all things paranormal. If you got ghosts, you're not crazy. You have a psychic child? We want to help you. Today, we're going to be discussing something really unique. I have as a very special guest, Becky Huffman. Becky wrote the foreword to my latest book, Psychic Children, Psychic People. And I asked her to write this foreword because she is a person who had an astounding experience and she used the tools that are in this book. And so I invited her to talk a little bit more about it. Sometimes when you see a name on a page, it sounds interesting, but when you put a name and a face together, this person had an experience that was beyond something she would have ever imagined she could experience. So because of that, I would like to introduce you to my friend, Becky Huffman. Becky, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So can you tell everyone a little bit about what happened? And this took place 17 years ago. Is that correct?
Yeah, we've known each other for 17, going on 18 years now.
Wow, and you haven't certified me yet. So,
well, if you go, I'm going.
So 17 years ago, how would you describe what your life was like and give everybody kind of a background of how we connected?
To put it short and sweet, absolute chaos, nightmarish chaos. Rewinding a little bit, we met through my mother had known a family member of yours and worked with them. And with all of the chaos that I was going through, she made the recommendation that I kind of talk to you or reach out to you and see if there was anything that you might be able to help me. I had gone through the Catholic Church. I had gone through the Methodist Church. I had gone through every avenue that you could really think of, spiritually speaking, to see if I could get help with what I was going through. And to be honest, it was a godsend that my mother worked with your brother-in-law. And that first phone call made a huge difference, just knowing that I wasn't imagining everything that I was going through. So yeah, I guess it goes way back. My kids were really little at that point. So,
well, can you give us an idea about what you were experiencing that made it so difficult to find help with, someone to talk to?
Well, to start us off, I was married to a toxic narcissist and had 3 children under the age of 3.5. And he would play games with me, but on top of just the simple games that humans play with each other and try to just be mean-spirited, the things that I was dealing with at home, we were going through a separation. He had moved out. We weren't comfortable in our home at all. You would come in and immediately coming across a threshold, it was just chills. You would be uncomfortable. The tinglies going up and down the spine. You couldn't hardly sit still or have a conversation with anybody without, hearing something or seeing something go by the corner of your eye. With a 3-year-old, a 1-year-old, and a 1-month-old, we weren't sleeping at all. We would lay down at bedtime and the dog would just pace. It would pace from room to room, bed to bed, and she was just on guard. Everyone was on edge. We knew something horrible was going on, but we couldn't see it. We couldn't put our finger on it because I could never have imagined what was going on. I just knew everything that we had in our home was not right. It was off balance. It's really difficult to kind of put in words, the feelings, that were kind of running through my entire family's minds, hearts, guts, whatever, however you want to phrase it. My mother was coming over, my father was coming over, my brother and my sister-in-law were coming over. Everybody was coming over constantly to check on us. Nobody was comfortable in the house.
Were you afraid? Were you afraid in the house?
What was that?
Were you fearful when you were in the house?
Oh yeah. Yeah. We were under constant attack. We felt it's that feeling like you're being chased. Something is there. Something's behind you. You're trying to get away. You're trying to just maintain yourself and you can't function. You don't get a good night's sleep. Something is just there lurking in the corner. Something's just waiting for the right opportunity to just, I guess, throw everything off balance as much as possible. It was incredibly unnerving. And then to not have any idea what you're working with or how to fix it or how to make it better is it's just infuriating and so just devastating to not be able to know how to pull yourself out of something for someone so I'm normally one of those people that's, pretty much a self-starter and I can pull myself up, you stumble, you fall, everybody does. Pick yourself up by the bootstraps and you keep on going. I found myself in a situation where there was no way that was ever going to happen. There was no rest. There was no calm. There was no peace. And actually being a middle school teacher, going to middle school was actually more peaceful than anything. And anybody that has middle school age kids knows that there is no peace in middle school.
Middle school is chaos. So for the work to be your place of refuge in a middle school tells you that something pretty tremendous was happening in your house. And I can't even imagine trying to explain that to someone.
Oh, no, you can't. Even when you try to explain it, everything you do, everything you say, you get strange looks. Everybody's just like, oh, yeah. They don't know what to say. Nobody knows what to do to comfort. You just kind of exude disaster almost or distress at every step of the way. And it's not very much fun. It's an awful place to be, to not know where to go, what to do, who to ask for help because of everybody giving you that look of, oh, I feel so sorry for you. And then they turn and walk away because they really, honestly, as much as they would love to help you, they just really don't know what to do. They aren't equipped with the tools. So, but yeah, that's the beginning, I guess is.
Had you contacted any other people with psychic ability?
I hadn't really reached out to anybody else with psychic abilities. To be honest with you, I've always been a spiritual person and I've always, been active in my church. Growing up, we went to the Methodist church and it always served me well. When I did get married, we got married in the Catholic church and I went to pastors in both churches. And one pastor gave me a book to read and the other pastor, came and blessed the house, but it was even worse after he blessed the house than what it was beforehand.
Which you couldn't have would be possible.
Yeah. You never would have thought, you would have thought, hey, this gives you a timeout. It gives you at least a moment of rest, one good night's sleep to get you to the next moment. But there was no solace. There was no calm. It just got worse and escalated daily. It was extremely difficult.
How did this affect your children?
My oldest, she could see things. She would wake up in the middle of the night and she would cry and she would tell me about, dark shadows in the corner or the scary man that was over there, just in the hallway. But it would be just right when I got her calm and kind of starting to fall asleep, and I would go back to my room and she would scream again. And if it wasn't her, then it was one of the other two. And they were so little that they just would scream and cry. So they didn't have the words to even explain what was going on. So that's traumatizing from a mother's viewpoint, to know that there's something going on that you can't see, you can't put your finger on, you know something's not right, and your kids are telling you, but there's nothing you can do.
That had to have been horrendous. So this means that, how long had this been going on? Let me back up just a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Was your house like this before you decided to get a divorce?
No.
What was the trigger that caused this cascade of these supernatural problems?
Well,
that you're willing to, or you're comfortable sharing?
Absolutely. I was going back and forth. It took about a week and a half, 2 weeks for me to make the decision to do anything, because my ex-husband at the time, my husband, we were trying to sort out what we were going to do. And, one moment he would be very agreeable and let's meet and let's have a conversation. The next moment, he would pretend that I was crazy and tell me we never had that conversation. So just kind of backing up a little bit. When I made the decision to stand up for my children and I and try to do something about what was going on, my ex-husband had an issue with it. And that was at the point where everything escalated. It started when I had called the priest of the Catholic Church. So background there, he grew up in the Catholic Church, had gone to seminary school at one point, and then decided, it just wasn't for him. Everybody changes paths at some point. And so I thought, well, let's start with the church that we got married in. And I went and asked for help. And, as I said earlier, the priest came and blessed our house with holy water and said prayers. And then that night was the first horrible, horrible night of sleep that we had. I don't think anybody slept more than 45 minutes. And when you have little kids, they're in bed 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night. So it was just a constant, pacing back and forth. But, this kid's screaming. I'm not comfortable. The dog's pacing. And it was just all over the place. I had this sense that there were just creepy crawlies everywhere, and people just walking through our house. It was like a highway, just walking everywhere, walking. There was something going. When I got permission, because both of our names were on the house at the time, for you to help me kind of look and see what was going on after, two failed attempts at getting, help from other spiritual avenues. My ex-husband gave permission, but it was a retaliatory permission. And it just, that was probably the point where it got the worst out of absolutely everything. It was bad after I had the priest come and bless the house, but the night that you were remote viewing the house and kind of looking to see if what you could see, it was like there were no stops. There were no holdbacks. It was like the floodgates were just opened.
Well, I have a theory about that, and see if this rings true for you. It's possible that he gave permission to prove to you that there is no one who could have helped you. And he was saying, whatever she wanted to do was fine, but he could also have said, oh my gosh, she's talking to psychics now. She's got to be crazy. But he gave permission. And under spiritual law, that was all I needed. But that house was unbelievably chaotic. It was a pretty bad house. And I knew it was going to be a lot of work.
Yeah. I guess that's putting it nicely.
Because so from the time the paranormal events started and then began to escalate when the priest came, and then when I started, how big a window of time was that? Was it a month, 6 months?
Oh, no. I think it was probably the matter of 2 weeks. We were desperate. We were absolutely miserable in that house. I mean, to the point where I was really just debating on grabbing the kids and the dog and just leaving everything because we were that uncomfortable. It was a matter of, I think, 2 weeks.
Okay.
So it was a very short time frame, but it was magnified tremendously.
Well, an interesting point to be made here is that you can have a location go from being just fine to overnight. It is completely possessed by all of these dark intelligences, because this is a lot more than ghosts.
Oh, yeah.
Somebody was playing some pretty powerful games, and you'd have to be extremely knowledgeable to have set this up at the level that I saw this. This was pretty intense, would be an understatement.
Yeah. Incredibly toxic on a whole nother level. I don't even know. I have a horrible time trying to find the words to describe it now. But I just, it was probably the worst feeling I've ever had with anything that I've gone through. And I've been through quite a bit, but that was probably, I think, the worst feeling that I could ever.
Well, basically you received a mega dose of black magic. And and there's just no other way to say what this is. I mean, we're just going to bring it out in the open in the light of reality and say, when someone practices black magic and they direct it against another person, it can create an almost catastrophic situation. And it's as if you want the other person to think they're crazy, but they're not crazy. They know what they're experiencing. And the fact that everything was fine up until a date on a calendar. And this is a really key issue, because on this date, it's like all hell broke loose. And because this was so enormous and intense, you were hit by what I would call a suffocating tidal wave of darkness, lower realm intelligences, and just, it was really bad.
Oh, yeah. It's suffocating for sure.
What would you, I don't know if you remember, because it's been 17 years. What were some of the first things that we did? Because I'm thinking, as crazy as her situation is, what I'm going to be telling her is going to sound even more off the wall.
And I remember the first conversation we had, as far as, I think it took you 2 days to even get to the point where we could even have a conversation about stuff. It took a minute. It took a good minute. But when we finally did talk, I think that first conversation was a few hours, and we talked about raising frequency with lights, the green lights for the heart center or whatever, mirrors. I think that was probably all of this first conversation. Was just, it was so much to take in. I don't even know. Like, I just remember being overwhelmed with everything, thinking, oh my gosh, I'm processing what's going on, what you've had to help, take care of or remove. And, my visuals obviously are a little bit different than what you were seeing, but I didn't have the visuals. I didn't have the vocabulary for all of this. I didn't have the background on all of this. And I think that made it even scarier. But going from not knowing what's going on and having this image in your head of the boogeyman, times 100 or infinity, I don't know what would be worse, but taking that and going into, okay, well, here are the steps to start, helping yourself, raise your frequency, eat healthy foods, laugh as much as you can. I think the mirrors were probably the thing I was most confused about, as far as
how could a mirror possibly help you in your situation?
Exactly. So feng shui mirrors, and then covering the mirrors that are in the house, or, I don't think we had gotten to the point where we were writing love around, circling yourself in love. But I think the covering of the mirrors was probably a big thing for me that made a really big difference.
One of the things that I remember very clearly was that most people have a mirror in their bathroom. That's just logical. And so I had you put aluminum foil, shiny side, facing the mirror and tape it up. Yeah. And I realized that must have seemed so strange to you.
Yes, it did. But
with a crazy situation, sometimes you need a crazy solution.
Absolutely. And it that shifted. The mirrors, I think, were honestly the part that really is where I could feel the shift in energy most dramatically initially. Making that decision to, blindly just, okay, I believe you, I'm going to do it. And what have I got to lose? I already look crazy enough telling people, what I'm going through is in my home. I put the foil on the mirror, but I'll be honest, it made a million times difference. That was the first night that we slept.
That mirror in your bathroom, because I could see it. It looked like a Chinese superhighway where they have 25 lanes on both sides of the direction. It was massive, and I'm thinking, my God, how come these people are still sane? And all I could think of was, if she doesn't cover that mirror, I'm going to be really limited.
Yeah.
But you were willing to step into the void. It's sort of like in Raiders of the Last Ark, where you have to take the leap of faith.
Oh yeah.
And I think, if I remember correctly, it made your ex-husband absolutely.
He was furious. He was so furious. It turned everything off that he was trying to do at that point. He was absolutely livid. Absolutely livid.
Yes, because it never occurred to him in his wildest dreams that anyone could, one, identify what he was doing, and two, put a stop to it, like went click. Yep. Now, that didn't mean that we stopped everything.
We had a lot of work to do after that, but that was the starting point.
We had to start somewhere and have the biggest effect on, just because a bathroom mirror is closest to the bedroom. Mm-hmm. And that mirror was what we would call a massive portal. Mm-hmm. And that portal was literally a doorway to hell. And yes. Go back to Grimm's fairy tales, to all different kinds of oral traditions that were sophisticated enough to have a mirror. They discussed that these were doorways between dimensions. And if you're if you're practicing the dark arts, you'll use a mirror. And somebody tried to do it to me, which didn't work, but people tried, and it was an interesting experience. But your experience was just beyond imagination. And that something that inexpensive, that simple, could make such a difference is really, really important. So in what you're remembering, what were the next things that began to help? How about the green lights?
The green lights helped. It was weird adjusting to having the night lights on. I've always been someone that liked having like a little night light in the hallway on, but having the color, it was different. But now I still have green light in every bedroom. So once we got used to it, it helped to raise the frequency, and it feels weird not having it now. So the green lights really did help there, as far as once I got to just maintaining like a base level. After we did those things, I'm trying to think of what was the next step. I think our next step was to surround, we could take the foil off, and then we surrounded our image with the word love in each corner of every mirror. So that was another thing that was helpful too.
Think how simple that is.
Oh yeah. I wish I would have done that sooner, because You were so patient with me, letting me process everything. I think it took me a week or so until I got to the point where I was ready to take the foil off and do the next step, which once I figured out what the next step was just to surround yourself in love. How can anything negative come to you if you're surrounded with love? And it was just a beautiful thing. It was absolutely wonderful. So that was I think the next big thing that we did. Aside from, I think at that point we were still talking about different prayers and, asking for beautiful archangels to come and help surround and protect us and guide us. And I think that first week or so, it was constant praying. Everything, every turn you took, I was saying prayers for the kids, for myself, for everybody.
Which what you were doing, we all know prayer is wonderful, but from a scientific, practical viewpoint, when you are praying, you are connecting to God. So and it's the priesthood of all believers. You don't have an intermediary. You don't need to go to a priest to talk to God. You can do it directly. And one of my big issues is when people go to priests to quote confess their sins, they now live in perpetual guilt. Mm-hmm. And that's not a healthy thing. So you raise a frequency by surrounding. Whenever you looked into a mirror, you didn't see darkness, you saw love. Mm-hmm. Because your subconscious is seeing love in every area of the mirror, mm-hmm. It's like a halo effect, which is really, really powerful. The green lights have a frequency that repels dark energies and ghosts because you have to do something. You can't pray all night long.
Oh, no.
So I think we also put salt under the bed.
Yes, we had blocks of salt under the bed, feng shui mirrors under mattresses.
Yep, facing up and down.
We had pictures with salt in them inside foil.
We did the salt and foil. So in other words, you took his energy and you put it in a container of foil, shiny side in, with salt. And then we wrapped all that up in a package. So all the energy he was sending out was being returned to him. Mm-hmm. And then we did the same thing with you and your family members so that all of your energy was only going to you. But we did another step. We put that packet in salt and foil, shiny side out. So anything being sent to you was also returned to the sender. So if someone was sending you love, man, they got this blast of love back. Mm-hmm. So under spiritual law, you have a right to defend yourself. You're a parent. You have the responsibility of 3 small children. You're working full time. You needed all the help you could possibly get. Mm-hmm. And I put a lot of work into that house. And because I just felt like I wasn't helping you, I was helping 4 human beings who had this wonderful future ahead of them if we could get past this dark time.
Oh, yes. Absolutely.
So as this began to happen, because if I could get you to have a night's sleep, which is not easy with small children and, 2-month-old, I remember that my kids didn't sleep through the night for 4 years. So I had 8 years of no sleep. So mm-hmm. I really get it. Mm-hmm. So if you can have sleep, then you can think clearly. If you can think clearly, then you can logically process what are your next steps. Mm-hmm. And then you can move forward with your life. And you had the right to be able to do that. So it took us at least a week to do some of the initial things.
Yeah.
And I do remember he just freaked out because he just couldn't believe someone could thwart his efforts because he was, well, I guess we should say it out loud. He was a practicing black magician. Yes. He knew what he was doing. He was conscious of it. He had free will to do it or not do it. And he was doing this to his own children, which was pretty chilling.
Yeah.
So as time went on, what are some of the other things that were helpful?
I think as time went on, initially, just the consistency was really helpful. Having a really excellent support group and people that don't, my mother was very, very supportive of all this, and my sister-in-law, she was very supportive of this. My father, my brother were also supportive, but my mother and my sister-in-law, and I don't know if it's just the dynamic between the three of us, but they were an excellent support group. That made a big difference to us too, as far as being able to redirect and process what we were going through, where we were at. Other things that we had done.
Did you do the Mozart?
Yes, we played Mozart every night. I'm trying to think back. It was so long ago now. We played Mozart. Gosh, I think we played that probably for a good 7-8 years. And we still, every once in a while, we'll play it now when we've just had a really rough day. We just put it on quietly, and kind of have it as background music. But we had the Mozart playing 24/7, probably for 7-8 years. So after this house, we moved in with my parents for a short little while. And then when we had a place of our own, implementing all of these things again in another home, was really, really, there was no question it was going to happen. The Mozart was a big deal. The lights, the green lights in every room helped. I'm trying to think of the things that we constantly did. The feng shui mirrors on the outsides, the exteriors of the house, underneath the beds, because we were being troubled with horrible nightmares, all of us. And as the kids got older, they would, they had the vocabulary to kind of explain, what they were seeing in their minds when they were sleeping. And just horrible, traumatizing events would go on in sleep. And all of us were under attack for years if we let our guard down and just, didn't keep up with things. And even when we did keep up with things, you breathe a little bit and you think, okay, I can loosen up. And it just, until we got him to realize that it wasn't worth his energy. And I think I think it took us probably 10 years of just being consistent. And
well, you were consistent. Once the mirrors in place, the mirrors are in place.
Right.
Once you've treated the mirrors with the loving words, you've closed the portals with something that simple.
Yeah.
The fact that you're playing the music, which is a super high frequency. You have salt under the bed, which thwarts things coming up. The feng shui mirrors are, and you can look up feng shui mirrors, but when you face them up and you face them down, whatever's coming at you or coming up through the ground, we face them out on all the corners of the bedrooms, because anything coming back is repelled. And those mirrors were really absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
Because what I wanted you to understand was that when you're doing psychic protection, it has to be a layered approach.
Mm-hmm.
You can't walk out in Wisconsin in your underwear and think you're going to play in the snow for more than a minute and a half. So when you build these layers and you put them in place, then you make it harder and harder. So that means someone who's attacking you has to use their energy. Mm-hmm. What these dark beings, what these black magicians do is they're seeking energy. It's not personal, although I think in your case it was. You're just lunch. And you can be lunch for somebody until, and we know that this happens as some people just actually take their own life because they can't handle the nightmare that they're living in. So it took a lot of courage for you to work through all of this. Did we do the Mylar crosses between the mattresses too?
Yes, we did. I knew there was a step we were forgetting. We had Mylar crosses, and I think initially I couldn't find the Mylar, so I had gone to the dollar store and found the double-sided silver poster board, and I just cut crosses out of that. So that was an extra step that we had, an extra layer that we had put in. We had done so many different things.
I was so badly attacked. That's where that came from, because having had this happen to me, all of this information was really hard won. And if you can share it with someone and make somebody else's life better, then that's really what this is all for. That's why the Psychic Children, Psychic People book is written. But even if you're not psychic and someone's attacking you, you really need a source. So in that book, chapters 39 through 41 really are the source of all of these tools. And then as time went on, you got a little more sophisticated. I came out with the crossing over prayer. I have a lot of people who are using they're printing out the crossing over prayer and putting it between their mattresses, facing up or facing down. The dark intelligence removal prayer, which I wrote in I guess I wrote that in 2019. There's a lot of very interesting prayers in this, which was, I guess, the 8th book.
Yes, that was wonderful. I think that you had shared a couple of those prayers with us shortly. I think you had come up with them maybe when you and I first started working together, or maybe you and Andrea. I'm trying to remember who it was now, but I know it was when we first started working together that we had the crossing over prayer. It was probably a year after we had been working together and, working on things that was brought to our attention. And that was wonderful too, because I just speaking it, and even if you say it in your mind, it was like a blanket of comfort that just got dropped down over top of everything, and everything just calmed. To this day, my kids each have a copy of that book. And I don't travel without that book.
I think a lot of people who purchase the book will not go anywhere without it.
Oh yeah, that book is amazing. That has really made a huge difference in our lives, because it just continuously, it constantly gives what you need. There's always a prayer for something. If you're not sure what it is, just start on one page and then you can kind of roll with it, and you find the right thing exactly when you need it. So those prayers, I think probably a year into things, maybe a little bit sooner, you had come up with those prayers, and we started saying the prayers, and they helped on top of everything. I think we also added tourmaline into it, black tourmaline, I think right off the bat.
Yes.
This
is what black tourmaline looks like. And I'm sitting at this desk. I'm absolutely surrounded. This is kind of an unusual piece because it's terminated on both ends. But black tourmaline absorbs darkness and you don't have to clear it. Mm-hmm. So black tourmaline at your entrance and your front entrance, your back entrance, and your bed. Mm-hmm. I have it in my car.
I have it everywhere. I have it in my purse. Everybody teases me. They're like, oh, you got a bag of rocks? So, your tourmaline goes with you.
And you have black tourmaline pendants. I had black tourmaline beads that I wore and wore and wore for years. I was traveling, wore them all the time. And everything that I was suggesting to you were things that I was using myself.
And I'm sorry, I just remembered, aside from the tourmaline, because we had tourmaline under our pillows or in our pillowcases on the nightstand, and then we had Monster water. I don't know, do you remember Monster water? We put some salt water and then did a couple of drops of lavender in it for each of the kids, and that was their Monster water or their Bad Dream water. And it was amazing. Like the lavender, of course, helped calm and soothe, and then the salt water helped purify everything, and it gave them something.
Yeah, the salt water glass by the bed is ironically, it's really powerful. And the lavender, you're smelling it in the water. Mm-hmm. And when someone's accessing your subconscious to terrify you, it's psychic terrorism. I mean, that's exactly what you were experiencing.
Oh yeah. Every night there for a while when we first were working together, every night I would have my ex come to me in some manner or another. And yeah.
And I think one of the things that happened was as you were working so hard to ratchet up your frequency of your children, that meant that since you were connected, and even though I did disconnect your Akka cords, which was making it harder and harder for him to connect to you,
Yep.
you're also raising his frequency.
Mm-hmm.
And that had to have made him really upset.
Well, and I think that was what made him decide that he just was going to let go at the end. So our separation started in, Gino, it was 2008 when we started going through all of this. Everything kind of came to a head in 2013. Mm-hmm. So it was several years that, we kept going, and finally it got to the point where he had to just step back, because we had raised our frequency to a certain level that it wasn't doing him any good. So,
well, he either has to rise with it and change his, to be blunt, evil ways, or he has to break off.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a really important thing. Now, I did have another question. When your oldest daughter was 3 and she could see these things, did she grow out of it, or was there a point where she stopped seeing them and she could tell you?
I think she's still, to a certain degree, every once in a while, will still see things out of the corner of her eye when she's kind of looking.
But not necessarily in your house. But
no, not in our home. When she's out and about, when she's out doing, whatever. She's in college now. So, but I think she stopped feeling like there was something malicious or negative. I mean, it took a couple of years. It took a couple of years for it to really, really mellow out. My middle child, she still is very sensitive with all of that. So my middle child really has to be particular about continuing to do all of these practices, and to keep her frequency up higher, and just really be particular about what she chooses to let into her energetic space. But my oldest stopped. I think it was with everything that we did. See, and we moved so many times, though, that first year that everything was going on. I think we moved 4, maybe 5 times in a year. So we'd get situated, and then we'd uproot and have to go somewhere else and have to get situated again. As soon as we'd get situated again, we'd uproot everything and have to do it all over again. And I think that, and there were reasons why we, had to keep moving the way we did. But I think had we been able to stay in one space, it would have been sooner. It would have been faster that she would have found more lasting relief. Because we really, I think there was a time where we lived in a space we lived with my parents, I think, for 2 months, and then we moved, and we were there for 6 months, and then we moved. It was a lot of moving. So I think that kind of hindered us. But once we got where we were situated, it would make a world of difference, because we finally would get everything kind of put in place and comfortable with the new arrangements, and, old habits kind of consistently going again. She did really well with it. But my middle child, I think she was just more sensitive with all of those things than, or more aware. There was more going on there, because in several of the places, because we ended up moving into a different house that had a whole nother history going on of its own. So I think we were going through a magnet moment.
Yeah. So you were constantly having to use the tools in each new place. Mm-hmm. And you had to build these basically lifelong habits, which I do myself.
Yeah.
Constantly, and, violet flaming your house, doing a salty rain on your house to clear this negativity on the whole property. I mean, I do that to this day. My driveway, my house, the street in front of my house, I pay taxes on it. All of these things that seem like, why would you have to keep doing that? Because there's a lot of negativity since the turn of the century. It feels like it's escalated.
Yeah.
So over the last 25 years, there's been a lot of darkness, and the practices, whether or not you have some black magician targeting you for whatever reason,
you're going to encounter
practice to keep yourself connected to God,
yes,
Christ, or to Buddha, whoever the divine being is that works the best for you. Doing prayers and having that sense that you are a powerful person because of your connection to the divine. And the other subtle issue I would kind of like to bring up is that you have 3 sensitive children. The amount of interference, and you had interference on steroids, but the amount of interference for a child who is psychic or has sensitivity or is empathic can be horrible. So even though these terrible things happen because of your ex-husband, because of him, you got to learn things that over time will be of the most benefit to your children, hopefully for the rest of their lives. And I mean, you have great kids too. I mean, despite the difficulties that you've had. So over the last 17 years, where would you say you are today? I mean, professionally and...
Oh, we're in a wonderful place. Everybody is. I'm still teaching, but I have a master's degree now in administration. So I was able to put myself back through school as a single parent. All 3 kids made it through school with honor roll, AP classes, just really highly intelligent kiddos. And I'll be honest, the wisdom we gained from that circumstance, really, it made all the difference in the world, because that is how you're able to reconnect and, find your sanity. You're grounding yourself. You're connecting to that light source. You're connecting to that love. And it makes all the difference. It helps you get through any moment. And then the wisdom connected to all of the scary things is priceless, because, I mean, you use it everywhere you go. Like you said, you layer it all the time. Still, it's a lifelong thing that you're going to do, just because you've lived it, it works, you've done it repeatedly, you've made mistakes where you've just, fell short for whatever reason, where you're just too tired or, had a rough day. You just forget that one layer, and you just have your little reminders that, hey, look, I'm going to step back up, and I'm going to reconnect and always try to be my very best version of myself. So that wisdom gained from that situation absolutely will serve us for the rest of our lives. Definitely a blessing. Definitely a blessing.
Yeah, sometimes blessings are wrapped in, tar paper sometimes.
This one was.
But I have to say,
sorry, the dogs are barking.
When you look in the mirror, I hope that you see a courageous woman. You see someone who has walked through the fires of hell.
Yes.
And come out with 3 outstanding children who love you, admire you, and respect you, and who are a credit to you and to humanity, and who will take these lessons and this light into the world. And what the darknesses wanted to do was to corrupt all of you. But instead, we have 4 human beings who are lights into the world. And to me, that just shows you how much really, really hard work you did. Because I can make suggestions all day long. At the end of the day, you're the person who put them in place. You manage the consistency. If you take a bath every night and you keep yourself clean and you wash your dishes, spiritually, when you're doing these practices, it's like you are cleaning your spiritual self.
Yeah.
And that is so huge to change that. And the higher your frequency, the better your health over the long term. The laughter, the love lifts these difficult situations. There's actually a wonderful book called the Urantia book. And
I think you had me get that right off the bat too. And I was reading different things in that. That was my homework.
That was your homework. Yeah, the Urantia book's not for the faint-hearted, all 2,090 pages of it. But the back third of it are the teachings of Christ. And in one of the comments where he was giving a talk, he talked about how important friendship is, how, your sister-in-law, your mom, your family, where you were there for each other. They believed you. They could feel it themselves. And they watched you transform from these desperate, terrified people to this remarkable, successful family. I really, really applaud you. I have a deep and abiding respect for you, what you've gone through, how you have brought up amazing children who they understand this, they are respectful of it, and now they're connected to the divine too. And in these crazy times,
everybody needs that.
It's one of the best protections we can have, but it's even more than that because they are spreading their light to the world just by living every day, living a life that seeks a higher frequency.
Absolutely. Well, and I think all of this too with the kids, seeing I think they couldn't necessarily, and a lot of kids don't necessarily understand, my mom and dad are having issues, but knowing that they've been stood up for, know that they've been advocated for, and then having the wisdom of the process of everything going through, prayers and having your routine, cleaning up your room, taking care of everything you got to take care of, and it's a sense of pride. So yeah, that was a big thing too with it all. And I'm very grateful for all the help that I was able to get. You have been a wonderful teacher and a wonderful friend for me. And I'm so very grateful.
Well, you're very welcome. And I count you as one of my very best success stories because you really walked through a bath of fire. I say that,
that's putting it nicely.
Walking a spiritual path is like walking through a minefield and an earthquake and a thunderstorm.
With blindfolds on.
That means what happened to you. You have to step very carefully. But here we are, 17 years later. Not only did you survive, you are thriving. And I remember we did have that conversation. I want you to stop surviving. I wanted you and your children to thrive and have a fabulous life and live all the way. And one really important point was that at no time, despite all the cruel things that your ex-husband did you ever use the word revenge?
Oh, no.
You wanted to get back to him. You were always as tired, as grindingly tired as I knew you were. You always took the higher road.
That was hard sometimes. Especially when you're so exhausted. It's very easy to, I think everybody can relate to having a weak moment where you just want things to stop. But it's so very important to try and take the high road because I think that magnified everything that we were doing. The fact that I genuinely, I didn't have any malintent. I wanted us to be able to do our best. I think that shocked a lot of people that knew us, because how could you see everything that we're going through and not have any sort of harsh feelings for the person that's kind of putting you through all of that? But I mean, you and I had talked repeatedly. I'm grateful for the experience. I'm grateful for the knowledge. I'm really the wisdom and the knowledge that came from this and the experience, and then it turning into the confidence and awareness and ability to do what you need to do, whatever your path may be.
Well, you changed your karmic path. I mean, that's a very crucial point, because you're so overwhelmed with what was happening to you that you couldn't even spell karmic path.
No.
Like, really, I got to feed a kid here. I got
I got a diaper.
Wow, what a job. At the end of the day, though, you earned an amazing amount of positive karma for taking the higher, harder road. And anger and resentment only poison you. And it leaves you in a healing place and a healthy place. And karma will take care of him.
Oh, yeah.
Karma will deal with whatever is supposed to happen. That's not within our job description. It's way beyond my pay grade, for sure.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and I'll never forget when we had that conversation where, I think, and it was just a passing thought that you kind of threw out there, but it was exactly those words. It's not our place. Sometimes, things, everybody, you just know everything's going to work out the way it's meant to work out, and karma will hold everybody accountable. I think you told me, you're probably not going to see anything in connection to him being held accountable, and that's okay. And as soon as you said the words, I knew it. Yeah, it's absolutely okay. And it just really resonated with everything that I guess that I am, that I'm choosing to be. It's not, you don't ever wish, I don't know. I guess I never wished ill on him or anything having to do with him.
I assure you that the lower realm bosses that he has will not treat him kindly for having lost the four of you. That, since I already knew that back end of it, because that's what happens. They punish those magicians who fail to perform. And not my problem. My focus is, like almost like a good attorney. I'm advocating for you and your family. That's my job. And since you stepped up every single time and you did the work every single time you did that, you earned the karma for amazing things. And so I want you to, my hope is that you and your children have a wonderful life. And I hope someday you're blessed with grandchildren, because it's really awesome.
Yeah. Not yet. I'm good. Not yet. But, whenever that time may come, I think it's going to be a wonderful, wonderful blessing. So, so far it's been a fantastic adventure, and it's not been dull. That's for sure.
And it's been the ride of probably many lifetimes.
Yes.
I think this is a good stopping point, unless there are any other points you would like to, is there any thoughts you would like to leave people with?
When you feel like you have nothing else to give, you always have a little more. You always have a little bit more. Just remember how much you're loved. You may not know who it is. You may not know where it's coming from, but there's always love that's surrounding you if you want it.
All right. Well, Becky, thank you so much for being on Ghost Helpers.
Thank you for having me.
And for those of you listening and watching, you can learn more about the books on GhostHelpers.com, or if you want to write to me and you have a question, contact at GhostHelpers.com reaches me. And I want to thank everyone for listening. And again, I'm so grateful to Becky for being willing to share her incredible journey. Good night, everybody.